Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the English Pro podcast with me, Oles. If this is your first time here, I want to say thank you for listening. This podcast is all about helping you learn English by listening to simple, relaxing stories. You don't have to repeat after me or take notes. Just listen, imagine, and enjoy the story. The more you listen, the more your English understanding grows naturally. Today's story is called The Quiet Library. It's about a young woman who works in an old library, a place full of silence, secrets, and books that seem to have their own voices. But one rainy afternoon, she hears something that changes her ordinary day into something mysterious. It's a slow, calm story, but maybe not everything is as quiet as it seems. So, find a comfortable place, take a deep breath, and let's begin. Her name was Ella. She was 24, quiet and gentle, the kind of person who always spoke softly even when nobody else did. Every morning, she took the same walk through the same streets, holding her umbrella and a small bag of toast. At 8:30 a.m., she would unlock the front door of the old city library, the one most people had forgotten about. The building was tall and thin, made of dark bricks that had seen too many winters. Inside it smelled like dust, old paper, and something sweet, maybe the wooden shelves themselves. Most days, nobody came in. Sometimes, one or two people would walk quietly between the aisles, take a book, and leave again without saying much. Ella didn't mind. She liked the silence. She liked the soft sounds, pages turning, the ticking of the big clock on the wall, the soft hum of the rain outside. The library was her world. But that day, the day everything changed, it was raining harder than usual. The kind of rain that makes the whole world gray. Water hit the windows like tiny drums, and the air felt colder. Ella made tea in the small staff room, wrapped her cardigan tighter, and went back to the front desk. She opened her favorite book, The Wind in the Window, and began to read. It was her 100th time reading it, but it still felt new each time. At 2:17 p.m., she heard it. A voice, soft, far away but clear. It sounded like someone whispering between the shelves. She froze. At first, she thought maybe she imagined it. Maybe it was the wind or the rain. But then she heard it again. "Hello," she called out. No answer. The only sound was the rain tapping the glass. She stood up slowly, her chair making a small sound against the floor. Her heart beat faster. "Is someone there?" she said again, a little louder. Still nothing. She walked toward the sound, between the tall shelves full of books, old and heavy, some with gold letters fading from their covers. As she moved deeper into the aisles, the light grew dim. The rain sounded further away, and the silence felt heavier. Then she heard again, closer this time. A whisper, a low, calm voice that said, "It's on the table." Ella stopped walking. Her fingers tightened around the edge of her cardigan. "What?" she whispered back before she could stop herself. But again, silence. She turned around quickly, half expecting someone to be there. No one. The air was still. She took a step backward, her shoe touching something small. It was a book, lying on the floor, its pages slightly wet. She picked it up carefully. It was old, with no title on the front, just a simple brown cover. She turned the first page. Inside, there was handwriting. Old ink, soft and faded. It said, "To the one who listens." Her breath caught. She turned another page. It was full of more handwriting, but not like a story. More like letters, written to someone unnamed. The first line read, "I am still here." Her hands trembled a little. She looked around, the shelves, the shadows, the small light coming from the reading room. There was no one. She closed the book and hurried back to her desk. For the next hour, She tried to focus on her tea, her reading, anything else. But the sound of the whisper, that soft, "it's on the table," wouldn't leave her head. When the rain finally slowed, the library felt strangely warmer, like the walls themselves were breathing again. Ella decided to lock up early. There was no one left inside anyway. She switched off the lamps one by one, the old lights buzzing softly as they faded. Before leaving, she looked at the mysterious book again. She had placed it on the desk beside her own novel. For a moment, she thought about leaving it behind. Maybe it belonged to someone. But her curiosity was stronger. She slipped it into her bag and turned off the last light. Outside, the sky was almost dark. The rain had stopped, but the streets were wet and shiny, reflecting the lamps like golden rivers. Ella started walking home, her shoes tapping softly against the pavement. The sound was comforting, real, alive, normal. But when she reached the small bridge near her apartment, she thought she heard footsteps behind her. Slow, soft, keeping her pace. She turned around. No one was there. She smiled nervously to herself. "You're imagining things," she whispered. But as she turned to walk again, she saw it. On the ground, under the streetlight, another book. The same brown cover. The same soft, faded look. She bent down slowly, picked it up, and held it close. There was a single note stuck inside. This one said, "The story isn't finished yet." Ella looked around again. The street empty, quiet, only the sound of water dripping from the trees. She stood there for a long moment, holding both books in her hands, feeling the rain return, light and cold. And she whispered to herself, or maybe to the night, "Then tell me." And somewhere behind her, faintly, almost lost in the sound of rain, she thought she heard a voice reply, "Tomorrow." The next morning, the rain had stopped. The sun shone softly through Ella's window, making the wet streets outside glimmer like silver lines. Birds sang quietly, and for a moment, everything felt normal again. But on the small table beside her bed were the two brown books, sitting there like they were waiting. She stared at them for a long time. Part of her wanted to forget, to leave them there unopened. But another part, the curious, quiet part, wanted to know. She made herself tea, sat on the edge of the bed, and opened the first book again. The same handwriting, old and soft, filled the pages. Some lines were broken, some faded. It looked like a conversation, but only one person was writing. "If you can hear me, turn the page. I miss the sound of footsteps. I remember the smell of rain on old books." Ella felt her heartbeat slow down. It was strange. Whoever wrote these words, they sounded lonely. Not scary, just forgotten. She turned one more page. There was a date written at the top. March 5th, 1964. Her eyebrows lifted slightly. That was more than 50 years ago. She closed the book gently and looked at the second one, the one she found on the street. The same cover, the same paper. When she opened it, there was only one page written in ink. "The library remembers." She felt a chill move down her arms. She stood up and looked out the window. The old library was only a few blocks away. She could almost see the roof from her apartment. The words played again in her head. "The library remembers." She walked there just after lunch. The sky was clear now, and the world smelled fresh, clean, almost too bright. When she reached the front door of the library, she stopped. It was quiet, more than usual. She unlocked it, stepped inside, and the silence wrapped around her like a blanket. Everything looked the same. The old wooden shelves, the long tables, the reading lamps. Nothing strange, but still the air felt heavier. She placed the two books on the main desk and looked around. "Okay," she whispered. "If someone's here, I'm listening." No answer. Only the sound of the clock ticking slowly on the wall. Yes, Saif. She felt silly, talking to empty air. She turned to walk back toward the shelves when suddenly the lamps above the reading area flickered. Once, twice, then stayed on. She froze. The sound of footsteps, soft, slow, came from behind the tall history section. She didn't move. The footsteps stopped. Her hands trembled slightly, but she forced herself to walk closer. When she turned the corner, there was no one. Only a small table. And on that table, another book. This one was open. The pages blank, except for one sentence written right in the middle. "Thank you for hearing me." Ella's breath caught. Her mind raced. She turned around, looking at the shelves, the corners, the empty chairs. "Who are you?" she whispered. But the silence didn't answer. Instead, the air seemed to soften. A warm breeze moved through the room, just enough to lift a few papers from the desk. The lamps flickered again, and for a moment, Ella thought she saw a shape. Not a person, not exactly, just a shadow of someone standing near the far window, watching her. And then it was gone. She stood there for a long time, unsure whether to be afraid or amazed. Her fear slowly turned into calm curiosity. She looked back at the books and smiled softly. Maybe it wasn't about ghosts at all. Maybe it was just the past, trying not to be forgotten. That night, she stayed late in the library. She made tea, lit one of the old lamps, and sat down at the main desk. The books were open in front of her, and for the first time, she picked up a pen and began to write back. "I hear you. I work here now. The library is safe." She waited for a while, staring at the page. Nothing happened. No whisper, no sound, no flicker. But she didn't mind. She closed the books carefully and placed them together on the shelf behind her desk, the one marked unsorted, where almost no one ever looked. Days turned into weeks, and the rain returned again and again. Sometimes when Ella stayed late, she thought she heard a soft sigh or the creak of a chair moving in another room. She never felt scared anymore. In a strange way, she felt less alone. The old library wasn't empty. It was alive, not with people, but with voices, stories, memories. And every time she walked through the quiet aisles, she whispered softly, "I'm here. I remember." Months later, a young boy came to the library for the first time. He was small, nervous, and holding a rain-soaked notebook. He asked if he could leave it somewhere safe, where stories don't get lost, he said. Ella smiled, pointed to a high shelf in the back, and said, "Right there. That's the perfect place." As he walked away, she looked around the library. The light from the windows painted golden lines across the floor. The air was warm, peaceful, and full of quiet life. And when she turned her head toward the desk, she could almost hear a whisper, soft, kind, familiar. Thank you for listening. This was The Quiet Library, told by Oles.